So we're at the New York Hall of Science in Queens, and today we're looking at connected worlds. It's a large, interactive, immersive ecosystem where you have a giant waterfall on the opposite wall of the space, a digital waterfall that flows down onto the floor. And when that water hits the floor, it actually travels out as a stream across the floor. This is a digital projection, a virtual stream. And then children can use logs that are on the floor to route that water to 6 different biomes or ecosystems. And in those biomes, they can stick out their hands, create seeds with their hands, and plant trees of different scales. And so these kind of biomes are essentially being kind of managed by the children, and the water is being distributed by the children to try and keep them all alive and healthy. The idea for Connected Worlds actually came from an older project of ours called Funky Forest. This was something we made for the Syndicate Festival in Amsterdam, an interactive ecosystem where children could plant trees with their body and then route water to the trees to keep them alive. We really wanted Connected Worlds to be a very large-scale experience. We wanted it to feel like something where you're not just interacting in one environment, but you're actually interacting in a world of sorts. We really wanted children to have this feeling like their actions in one space, their local actions, would have kind of global implications. The floor is made up of 7 projectors and is a total of about 3,000 square feet of interactive projection. And then we have 2 walls that are 14 feet high, and they run a total of 120 feet around the space, and that's where you have the interactive biomes that you can plant seeds in and pull water out of the reservoir. It really took us some time to figure out how to design the software. It's running across 8 different machines, and they're all networked together, and they actually the machines have to constantly be talking to each other. And then at the same time, we need to be able to understand what kids are doing in this very large space. So we need to be able to detect when a child holds out their hand, and we need to be able to detect when logs are moved on the floor. How do we detect logs on the floor, and how do we get kids to really intuitively route water with these physical logs? And the solution we came up with was to wrap the logs in retro-reflective fabric, similar to what you'd have on a bicycle vest. And then we're using IR lights shining down from above that reflect the light off of the logs and back to the camera. And then from that, we can kind of stitch the floor together, where we just really see the logs as these big white blobs. And once we have that, we map it to the projection space, we can get the water flowing across the floor to react to it. One of our big challenges was to figure out how to track children's hands when they were making seeds at the wall, and make it work for not only larger children, but really small children. Typically in the past, we've tracked from behind and had children hold out their hands to the side, but we really wanted to be able to get the interaction working as well if they held their hands out in front of them. So we came up with this idea of maybe looking at the children from above with a Kinect camera. And the Kinect can actually do skeleton tracking if it's looking at you front on, but because we were looking at the children from above, we actually had to write our own kind of skeleton tracker from an aerial perspective, which was, I think, took a good amount of time. What we realized is actually, after doing some user testing and getting feedback from children, is that the more realistic it was, the more distracted children were being with the details that were not actually that important. And we realized if we actually made the creatures completely fantastical, it forced children to look at what the creatures were doing and not make any assumptions. And so we found that children would actually ask much more questions about why did that creature just leave this environment? With sustainability, a lot of the kind of issues with it are that you don't actually see the result of your actions. You're separated from the results of your actions not only by time, but also by space. That's sort of really the goal that we sought to kind of emphasize in Connected Worlds, which was, let's look at sustainability from a systems thinking perspective, where children actually get to see these chains and these feedback loops.